Mark your calendar for Friday, March 9th at 7 o'clock p.m. for the Fairfield Christian Academy Night of Excellence 2012. This year's speaker is former Ohio State linebacker Anthony Schlegel, along with a special performance by the OSU Alumni Band. Tickets are available at the FCA Elementary Office and Door B, or online at www.fcaab.org. Again, that is March 9th at 7 o'clock p.m. featuring Anthony Schlegel at Fairfield Christian Academy.
Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phalen, a weekly program on LSN Television, Time Warner, right here in Lancaster, and also on 90.9 FM, WFCO Radio. Each and every week we have guests from within the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office and also throughout the community. And a very special guest this week is my friend Chief Dave Bailey. Good to see you, Chief.
Sheriff, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Always, and we've really come to become friends here in the last 10 plus years.
It's been a big perk of being the police chief to get to know you, get to know your department, develop this friendship. And you know, I love to talk about how important the cooperation is and how I've never seen it like this in this county before, where there is so much unity in the law enforcement community. And I give you a lot of credit for spearheading that.
And we go further back than even the police agency because we actually went to the same elementary school. Not together. I was ahead of you. I hate to say that, but a number of years ago in Columbus, east side of Columbus, Fairmore Elementary.
We did indeed. I'm sure glad to hear, Sheriff, you admit publicly that you are in fact older than me.
Well,
I don't think people know that, but we did. We're east side Columbus kids and ended up in Lancaster, and
even had some of the same teachers.
Yeah, we remember the same principal, and maybe
Mrs.
there's
Dellenbaugh, Mr. Swinger.
Maybe there's a reason we remember the principal.
That's for sure. Well, Lancaster, lots of things going on, and I think, we've talked about this many times, Chief, that a lot of times when we talk a lot about the heroin and opiate problems and different things, but the reality is Lancaster is a safe and secure community by any stretch. It's a place that you can go out at night, you can be over by Shaw's, you can be walking in the mall, and you really don't feel threatened. And I know that we have talked about this many times, how a lot of people, because we've done a pretty good job of promoting some of the issues in the community, there's almost a perception that things aren't safe here and those kind of things, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
You make a really good point, Sheriff, and thank you for saying that. Lancaster is exactly what you say. It is a safe and secure community. I think we're more transparent here. We're willing to say we have a drug problem. We're willing to say we have an opiate problem. But I don't think we have a worse problem than anybody else. I think we're just more vocal about it. And it's good that we are, because that's going to help lead to a solution. But you're right. We still enjoy a lot of freedom in this community. Some people still don't lock their doors. I wish they would, and they should. But some people don't. But you're right. This is not a major metropolitan area. You don't really need to fear for personal attack when you're walking around Lancaster, and I think it's good to reassure everybody that, in fact, we still have a great quality of life here. We are addressing the drug problems. We're starting out on that. It's huge. I'll admit it's a big problem, but we'll make progress in time, I believe.
And then just this morning, we went to the State of the City address with Mayor Smith. Lots of good things going on in Lancaster.
A lot more than people think. I mean, we talk about the economy being in such a sluggish condition, but I think there are some signs of life. We heard today about a lot of positive things. There's a lot of people in Lancaster, Sheriff, that are working hard to move things forward. They're not getting bogged down with all the negativity. They're looking for those opportunities to develop Lancaster, make it an even better place to live and to work, and I'm positive. I have a good, open attitude about this.
Now, with the Lancaster Police Department, anything going on in particular that you want to share this afternoon?
Well, there is one thing I'm very proud of, and I got to tell you right up front, Sheriff, I had nothing to do with it. I wish I could take credit for this, but this is something that the officers did themselves, and that is in a record storage area in the basement, kind of a dusty old disused space. The officers took that space and have turned it into a gymnasium. They did this all without any taxpayer money at all. They got donations. They found things online that they could buy. Officers themselves chipped in. They put a new paint job in this room. like a special gym padding type floor in there, brought in all kinds of professional equipment. When you walk down there now, I mean, it looks like Gold's Gym, and it's very, very nice.
And I think that's very important, especially for the line of work we're in, to make sure that our deputies, our officers stay in good shape. And what an incentive to have a workout facility right in the police headquarters.
It really is, and Detective Kurt Humbert stepped up and led this project. He had a lot of help. Some of the officers jumped in with him. Simon Hall comes to mind. Simon is a woodworker, and he did a lot of the shelf preparation, because when we took those old records out, Sheriff, we had to put them somewhere else, so we moved them to another part of the building. He built all those shelves. I mean, that would have cost a fortune. One of our other detectives was quite a painter. Detective Eric Dimble did the paint job down there. I have no idea what this would have cost if we'd have tried to do this with department funds, but it would have been significant. So hats off to them, and I'm looking forward to trying to. The weights are too big down there for me, but I'm going to use the treadmill. I'll use the treadmill.
Now I go to the Y, and people say I see you there, and I always tell them I'm the guy with the light weights over there. But again, and before airtime, you know, we talked about this. The deputies did this a number of years ago. Even before I became sheriff, they had a weight room, and it was attached to our minimum security jail over on Wheeling Street. And within the last 24 months, they've really done a good job of kind of updating that. And again, donations, they've gotten some things from the government in that program. So it's been a terrific addition. I really try to encourage my deputies to get involved in that and stay in good shape. It's important because you never know when you're going to need to be in some kind of a fight or some kind of a match where you're going to need to be in physical shape or chasing someone.
I've seen that room, Sheriff. You gave me a tour of that, and that was very impressive. And I'm sure some of our officers saw it, and maybe that was the inspiration for them to do the same. But I think you're right. We've got to stay in good shape.
Now, things going on in Lancaster as far as some programs you have. You have the DARE program.
We do. The DARE program is alive and well, and I'd like to talk about one of the aspects of the DARE program that we rarely hear anything about, and that is it's cash donations, it's giving back to the community. Of course, the DARE curriculum is critically important. It brings forth that anti-drug, anti-violence, anti-bullying message in the schools, and quite frankly, that may be the only time that some of those kids actually hear that message. But another facet of it is DARE is a widget maker, so to speak. A lot of people like to donate to DARE. You know, we have access to drug fines that can help support DARE, and we can give some of that money back, Sheriff, to the community to help some of our nonprofits. For instance, a lot of youth sports activities in Lancaster and Fairfield County, they don't have much money. They come to the DARE program every year, and we try to help them out. Last year, I think we gave out over $6,000 cash to area organizations to help support youth activities that everyone would agree are wholesome and important.
Yeah. For folks just joining us, this is Chief Dave Bailey, and this is This Week with Sheriff Dave Phalen. And Chief, recently, tragedy in northern Ohio where they had a shooting, and I guess as of the taping of this program, 4 young people were tragically killed. And, you know, I don't know how you wrap your arms around a tragedy like that in a small community. But I think what it tells me is this isn't something that could only happen in New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles where you hear about these kind of things. This is small town USA, just 3 or 4 hours north of us.
Very true. Chardon, Ohio, Sheriff, 30 miles from Cleveland. We're about 30 miles from Columbus. Similar sized town, similar sized school district. Unbelievable that this could happen there, but it did. And I want to say that, you know, interestingly enough, before I even knew that this happened, our principal, Lancaster High School principal, Jack Greathouse, was on the phone telling me about this, and I immediately got online and got up to speed on it. But that's how closely our school system pays attention to things. The principal knew about that before I did, and I say to him, congratulations on being so sharp. But you're right, we have to prepare, and we have to accept that that could happen here.
Yeah. After that happened, I talked to our road commander, Lieutenant Tim Vorse, and he was making sure that our deputies stopped by all the schools over the next week or so and just kind of stopped in, kind of reassured them. And again, I think the chances of something like that happening in a school is pretty remote. I mean, it gets a lot of publicity, but probably the safest place a kid could be a lot of times is in school. So we don't want to blow it out of proportion, but we do want to make sure that the school system, the teachers, the principals, the staff know how to respond if, God forbid, there would be some kind of an emergency or shooting or tragedy within the school properties.
And I agree, it is a very low percentage thing. And I was extremely encouraged that our school officials, Principal Jack Greathouse and others are so tuned into this that they were already tracking this as it was developing. As it was a developing story, they were already taking steps. They were meeting with their staff and taking steps to reassure people, and glad to hear that the sheriff's office was available to visit the school. So I think we're paying close attention.
Yeah, I think we have to be proactive. We have to plan ahead for any eventuality, knowing that it's probably not going to happen. But again, if something like that happens, we want to make sure we're on the same page. And I think that's why it just illustrates another area of importance, because today there is a very strong cooperative effort and working relationship between the police department, and that's not just with the sheriff's office and Lancaster Police Department. We have come together as an entire community. Right. I know you have a great relationship with Chief Taylor in Pickerington, the village police agencies, Chief Tussey in Baltimore. So the real winners of these good relationships is the citizens in the community.
Absolutely. My favorite phrase is, when the cops work together, the public wins and the criminals lose. As corny as that sounds, it's really true. And we've got a new member who's joined us up in Millersport. Chief Shirk is signed on board, and he's already shown that he wants to be a part of this cooperative effort. And sometimes people say, all right, Chief, we know that you all work together. Why do you talk about it so much? I think it's that important, because folks who've been around Fairfield County for a long time can remember when we were all kind of isolated.
Right.
We were really not on the same page, and after you became sheriff, quite frankly, I think we all started to have dialogue, and that's grown into what it is today. And without this cooperation, I can't imagine how we could get the things done that we do. And let's talk for a moment, Sheriff, about the Major Crimes Unit. Most people think that the Major Crimes Unit is a freestanding entity with its own personnel. What they don't realize, it has its own commander, a very able individual named Commander Eric Brown, but the personnel in that unit are from the law enforcement community around us, from the Sheriff's Office, from the Lancaster Police, Pickerington, Hocking County. So it is that cooperation that holds that together.
And it was just within the last 6 weeks or so, they had a major roundup of drug dealers, and what a great effort that was. 30-some drug people involved in drug-related offenses here in Lancaster?
That's right, Sheriff. Well over 30 suspects, many of these considered to be above the street level in terms of their capacity to distribute drugs. Somewhat major players arrested. Hats off to the Major Crimes Unit, Commander Brown. I think you observed right before that raid began, I think as you scanned across the room and saw all the law enforcement officers there, I know that it pleased you, and it did me as well, to see deputy sheriffs and Lancaster police officers side by side going out into the field to work together. I mean, that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that those are the kind of things, whether it's a drunk driving checkpoint, whether it's working on checking our sex offenders in the community, all those kind of things, the more that you do together, the better the more relationships you form, and that's what it's all about. These things are about forming relationships. It's about, I can get on the phone and call you at home, which I do occasionally, and so when you have that kind of dialogue, that the real winners, again, is the community, and the losers is the community, or the criminals. Very well said.
And that's the way we like it. We want the criminals to be on the losing side of the equation.
So we're going to come back next week. And I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about your career with the police department. Pretty impressive. You come up through the ranks, and as the chief of police, and maybe some of the things you see in the future, maybe some of the challenges, maybe talk about some of the things you would like to see happen within Lancaster and beyond in the next years to come. And I do appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Now you've got some ribbons on your, not to embarrass you here, we got a couple minutes. Some of these ribbons, what do they represent?
Well, if you stay around an organization long enough, eventually they're going to give you these ribbons. No, actually, I'm very proud of these.
Yeah.
I've got some different ones on there, but one of the ones I'm most proud of is, you'll see a black ribbon on my uniform, and I was very fortunate and very lucky to be the recipient of the Brent Markwood Award many years ago, and that's really very near and dear to me, and I feel very strongly about that one. Brent Markwood was somebody I worked with when I was a police officer on the street. I got a chance to get to know him, so that's extremely important. Some of the others are just from being around the agency for a while and kind of keeping your nose clean and enjoying your job. So it's nice to have these ribbons. I have to be frank with you, Sheriff. A lot of our officers are way more decorated than I am, and that's the way it should be. They're out on the street doing the hard work.
Yeah. Good-looking uniform, your dress uniform.
Thank you. I think one of the things we're trying to do at Lancaster Police, and I think everybody down there is part of this, concentrate on our appearance, concentrate on professionalism, bring back some of our old traditions. For instance, this badge. This is relatively new, only about a year, but it's modeled after a very old badge that we had many, many years ago, back in the 1920s and 30s. We'd kind of switched over to sort of a generic looking thing, and the officers didn't like it. And the thing I like about our department is, you know how police officers are. They're not shy about telling you what they like and don't like. And they stepped up and asked if we could do get another badge. I thought that was a great idea. Officer Jim Marshall from our Community Services Unit led that project, and we ended up with this, and I'm happy with it.
That's a good looking badge.
Thank you.
And it's funny because when I was with the Columbus Police Department, you would look on, they had a case where officers had been killed in the line of duty, and you could look back maybe 100 years and it was the same badge. So that is something that will be here maybe 100 years from now, and you can feel pretty good that you're the one that kind of put that together.
Well, I sure hope
it's a good looking badge.
Thank you. I hope it lasts that long, and I think that's one of the strengths of the Columbus Police Department. They have that strong sense of tradition.
Right.
They have that strong sense of unity, and it's reflected in the officers, and I think that's a huge advantage.
Chief, we're going to have you back next week, and I do appreciate you being with us. The clock on the wall says we've got to go. I do appreciate you, the viewer, and the listeners that join us each and every week, and the nice comments and calls that I get in the office. So if you're out there driving, buckle up, be careful. God bless, and we'll see you right here next week.
I'm home, and I love it. I'm home, where I belong.
It's always nice to come home, but many Americans are at risk of foreclosure and losing their homes. Making home affordable from the U.S. government has already helped over 1 million struggling homeowners like these. The sooner you act, the better chance we can help you.
I'm home, where I belong.